let's talk about separation anxiety. You probably picture a little kid's first day of school, right? But what if that really intense fear of being left alone wasn't just some childhood phase? Well, in this explainer, we're diving into how separation anxiety shows up in adults, where it comes from, and maybe most importantly, how it can be managed.
So when I say separation anxiety, yeah, that image that pops into your head is probably a teary-eyed kid clinging to their parent's leg. And for a long, long time, that was the only picture the medical world really focused on. But turns out, that's only half the story.
For decades, the official diagnostic books basically locked this diagnosis in childhood. To even get diagnosed, your symptoms had to have started before you turned 18. But, as our whole understanding of mental health has grown, that old rule has been completely tossed out. And this shift, it's huge. It's a really big deal because it officially opened the door for so many adults to finally get a name for what they were feeling and get the help they really needed.
Okay, so the change looks pretty simple on paper, but its impact is just massive. The go-to guide for psychiatrists, the DSM-5, used to have this hard cutoff at age 18. The latest version, it got rid of that completely. This was a total game changer. It was an admission that this kind of anxiety isn't just some childhood thing that hangs on, it can actually start at any point in your life.
So if it's not just for kids, then what does adult separation anxiety actually look like? The symptoms can be pretty intense, and honestly, they're often really misunderstood.
At its core, the disorder is this overwhelming, way over-the-top fear of being separated from a key person in your life, what a therapist might call an attachment figure. This could be your spouse, your partner, your child, even a super close friend. And the key word here is excessive. We are talking way, way beyond just missing someone.
This fear isn't just one feeling. It's like a whole cluster of things. To get a clinical diagnosis, you need to have at least 3 of these symptoms, and they have to be serious enough to mess with your daily life, your job, your friendships, your relationships. This could mean a constant, nagging worry that something bad will happen to your loved one, a deep, intense fear of being by yourself, or even physical stuff like headaches or nausea when you're about to be apart, or even just thinking about it.
And this is where it gets so important to understand what's going on. A behavior that might look controlling or overprotective, like, say, someone who calls their partner constantly, isn't about a need for control. When you look at it through the lens of this disorder, you see it's really an expression of this deep, profound fear. It's a desperate attempt to keep that person safe and close.
So that kind of leads us to the next big question. Why does this happen? What makes someone more likely to develop adult separation anxiety in the first place? Let's take a look.
Well, there's no one single cause. It's usually a mix of different factors. It might get triggered by a huge stressful event, like a death in the family, which can make the fear of losing someone else feel terrifyingly real. Other things that can play a role are a family history of anxiety, dealing with trauma or loss as a kid, or even going through a massive life change, like moving far away from your whole support system.
And another thing is that separation anxiety rarely travels alone. It very frequently shows up with other conditions. Someone might also be struggling with obsessive-compulsive disorder, or panic attacks, or agoraphobia, which is that intense fear of being in places where it's hard to escape. And all these conditions can just feed into each other, creating this really complex web of anxiety.
And just to give you a sense of how common this is, research suggests that about 6.6% of adults will experience separation anxiety disorder at some point in their lives. That means millions and millions of adults are living with this. It really highlights why it's so important that it's finally getting the recognition it deserves.
So what can you do about it? Well, the really good news is that this is a treatable condition. There are clear, proven ways to manage the symptoms and get your life back.
The approach to treatment usually comes at it from a few different angles, focusing on 3 key areas. You've got psychotherapy to get at the root thoughts and behaviors, medication to help manage the really intense symptoms, and support groups to build a community and find new ways to cope.
Let's break down the 2 main pillars here. On one side, you have cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This is often the first thing doctors recommend. It helps a person learn to spot and challenge the fearful thoughts that are fueling all that anxiety. And on the other side, you've got medications like SSRIs, which you might know as antidepressants, that can be used to manage the most severe symptoms, giving someone enough breathing room to really make progress in therapy. And these treatments, they're not an either-or kind of thing. In fact, for a lot of people, the most effective strategy is actually combining them. The medication can kind of turn down the volume on the anxiety, while the therapy gives you the long-term tools you need to change those underlying thought patterns for good.
Okay,
We have covered a lot of ground, so let's do a quick recap of the most important things to remember from all this.
First, and this is the big one, adult separation anxiety is absolutely real, and it's an officially recognized diagnosis. Second, the symptoms are severe. They go way beyond just missing someone. They can really take over your life. Third, it's often tied to major life events and can show up alongside other conditions. And finally, and this is key, there's hope. There are effective, proven treatments out there, like therapy and medication.
So, we'll leave you with this to think about. Knowing that behaviors we might be quick to label as overprotective or controlling could actually be someone's way of expressing a deep, clinical fear, how might that change the way we show up and offer support to the people in our own lives? Thanks for joining us.